What up, everybody? Happy Monday once again. What's going on? Good to see everyone on here on kind of a busy Monday night. This was not the greatest Raw, kind of strange in a few ways, but left us no shortage of stuff to talk about, and we got a little bit of an idea of what we're looking at heading into Extreme Rules, which is exactly what I was hoping we would get out of tonight. So we got a lot to get into. First of all, how you guys doing? I saw that there was a bunch of people already in here waiting for me to go live. Shout out to Joshua Aparicio with the $5 super chat right off the bat. Thank you very much, man. I'll give it 2 weeks until Big Show turns heel and becomes the Big Ninja. Would not be surprised at all. Big Show did have a presence on the show tonight, even acted as a little interim general manager, I suppose, making a match for next week. We'll talk about all of that and some breaking news that a couple of you have mentioned here in the chat right off the bat. Ryan Satin just broke this news 18 minutes ago on Twitter. A developmental talent in WWE who was last on the site at the Performance Center on June 9th is tested positive for COVID-19. All talent, production crew, and employees who were on site will now be tested. Following the results, WWE plans to proceed with a normal schedule. So they finally have had their first, I guess, documented positive test here. And they're going to test everybody and I guess just do what they need to do. Hopefully this hasn't spread too far and nobody else that works there is infected, and hopefully no wrestlers either, because the last thing they need right now is missing more people and more potential titles being held up and that sort of thing. So kind of interesting news there. We'll monitor it and see where it goes from there. I can be heard and everything, right? Yeah, we're looking good. And good to see everybody in here, like How Wheezy and Jet the Hawk and Ian Dunn and Ethan and Sports Fanatic and Stone Cold Naveed. Good to see you. And Tim, Prince. Yeah, I definitely am feeling Drew McIntyre and Randy Orton. We're going to talk about that whole situation tonight. We had Christian making a return and technically having a match, although I was skeptical all night long that we would actually get a match between the two. Technically, it does count. There was a pinfall and a victory, but you know, a lot went into that main event and setting that whole thing up. And with Extreme Rules kind of in between now and SummerSlam, I felt like we had a lot of stuff predicted correctly last night based on what we talked about. We talked about Bobby Lashley and Drew McIntyre likely not being finished with each other, given the way the match went down last night with Lana sticking her nose in there and screwing it all up, which means they can set up another match for Extreme Rules, which makes sense because you can blow off the feud there and save a new opponent for Drew for SummerSlam. And that's exactly what they're doing. That actually makes a lot of sense. And given the state of the roster right now on Raw, the only real, in my mind, logical challenger for Drew at SummerSlam, aside from Brock Lesnar, would be Randy Orton. So that's what I'm hoping we get, I suppose. I think that'll be a good match. Drew McIntyre, Randy Orton. Orton can put him over. Why not? I'd be down with that. Should be good stuff. So we'll see. But at least we have some sort of an idea of what is going to happen in the next couple of months. And we had some interesting incidents tonight, couple of swerves, couple of surprises, and kind of a heel turn at the end. A lot of stuff to get into. Yeah, Ungovernable, good to see you as well. What's up, Trey Williams? I got a little bit of news, and Zane, good to see you as well. I've got a little bit of news regarding my schedule this week. We're going to be doing a live stream on Thursday night. This is going to be courtesy of Joey, I believe, right? Shit, I'm almost positive it's Joey. Let me just make sure. Yeah, Joey G. That's who I thought. He has made a very generous donation a couple of weeks ago to have a live stream done, so I'm going to do that on Thursday night, 6 p.m. Pacific time, 9 p.m. on the East Coast. That's for those of you that live here in the States. Anywhere else, you're just going to have to do the math there. And we're going to talk about the Money in the Bank 2011 pay-per-view and everything surrounding that. The pipe bomb, the CM Punk re-signing with WWE, the entire summer of Punk, maybe even a little bit about SummerSlam, Kevin Nash and Triple H's involvement, and that whole deal surrounding CM Punk. We're going to talk about that in a nice casual hangout and live stream Thursday night. So keep an eye out for that. That's coming to the channel. And then we'll be back up here as normal for Saturday's Winged Eagle podcast. We haven't done one in a couple of weeks because we've had pay-per-views the past 2 Sundays, and I've been doing just predictions on Saturdays, and I was coming up here the past 2 Wednesday nights doing AEW and NXT reviews. But based on the audience on those, I am never going to fucking do those again. That was horrid. So I think those are going to cease to exist unless I just randomly happen to be off on a Wednesday or something. Maybe I will do them. But this week we'll be back to the normal format. Full podcast on Saturday. We'll discuss a little bit more of tonight's Raw, everything we see on Wednesday, Friday night SmackDown, and, a preview to Extreme Rules and Fyter Fest And all that stuff will resume this Saturday and try to get things a little bit back to normal here on the channel. So that's the deal for this week for those of you scoring at home. Let me knock out some more super chats before we start getting into the Raw results and really getting into the meat and potatoes of the live stream here. Joshua, I knocked you out. Joey G, there you go, man. Good to see you. $5 in from you, and your stream is coming Thursday. Also, I hope that time is okay for you. Let me know. When the audience comes back, do you think WWE will have different stage sets, or will they resume with the sets they had before COVID? I don't know if they're going to go full-blown different stages. I don't know if they're really thinking about that right now. Everything's so up in the air with when things are going to get back to normal. If apparently WWE is starting to put plans in place. There were some reports of that today for when an audience is allowed to be back, what they're going to do and what their strategy is. So they're thinking, but I don't know if they're really thinking about redesigning sets at the moment. I'd probably be more concerned with just getting back to TV, seeing what that's going to be like, and going from there. But I'm all for different stage sets. It was such a nice breath of fresh air at In Your House to see what they did for NXT there. And if they started doing more of that in the future, I'm all for it. But in immediate terms, I think it's so much is just unknown that that's not something that's probably high on their priority list right now at the moment. And by the way, I'm so bummed out. No alcohol in here again. Still no beer. I'm going to go to the store as soon as I'm done with the stream here, but I never got a chance to go run any errands today and pick up any beer, and I completely forgot I didn't have any in the fridge. So 2 streams in a row, I am sitting here without a Stella. My God. But that'll change on Thursday. We'll hang out and have a good time. So I'm just drinking the good old soda and Gatorade and water tonight. That's all. Who else did I miss? Divine Ricks. Thank you very much, man, for the $4.99. I got to say, after Backlash and tonight, I'm very impressed with Randy Orton. Orton's the star, man. He's been the MVP the last couple of months. I mean, the entire build with Randy Orton and Edge was phenomenal on the mic and everything. But Randy Orton, you know, he shows what a legend he can be sometimes and what a killer he can be at times as well, and tonight was no different. Really good stuff. That's why I feel like he's the only logical choice for McIntyre at SummerSlam. You know, like I said, unless they bring Brock back or something, which I don't think anybody really wants to see right now. DM23, thank you as well for the $5. Appreciate that. Do you think Christian will fill in for Edge till he returns from injury? Also now for some reason, I want to see Orton versus The Fiend down the line. Oh, for some reason you want to see that down the line. Yeah, a rekindling of that rivalry, because I think they kind of dropped the ball on it last time, and it had its moments. Some of it was good, and then the payoff at WrestleMania was just shit. So if they kind of revisited that down the line, I'd be all for it. Christian being back in the ring, though, I don't know. Based on what we saw tonight, I'm still not sure. Now, if he would have had a 10-minute match with Randy Orton or something like that, I'm like, oh, man, we might see Christian back in the ring a little bit. But since they did the low blow and the punt, and it really wasn't much of a match, you know, and Christian was he didn't really look like he was in ring shape. He was dressed in street clothes. I don't know. It does remind you a lot, though, of when Edge retired and Christian kind of filled in and won the World Heavyweight title right after Edge had to retire. So kind of shades of that here, but I don't know if we're going to see him back in the ring, maybe for a special attraction match or special occasion match. And I still think that maybe Christian could get in the ring before Edge retires and we could see some sort of Edge and Christian reunion in the ring. I don't know if they necessarily need to face each other or feud with each other unless they want to personally for some reason, but I would love, before it's all said and done, to see at least one more Edge and Christian tag team match. Maybe they could even win the titles. The Outlaws won the titles, the Dudleys won the titles, the Hardys won the titles, all within the past few years, right? Only one team left, Edge and Christian. Give them the belts too. I think the tag team division could use it right now. It's a fucking mess. And we'll talk about that in a second as well. Taylor Moyes, thank you for the super chat as well. Appreciate the $2. Will we ever get a Raw watch along again? Miss them? Yeah, maybe. I'm going to try to do watch alongs a little bit more. We'll do them for certain pay-per-views. Maybe I'll do one for SummerSlam. We'll see. I need to bring back some watch alongs and do some more of those for sure. And Dominique, good to see you as well, man. Appreciate the $2. How making food with gloves and mask because it sucks for me. It's no fun having to do extra stuff to do anything, especially when you're at work. That's for sure. Oh yeah, that wasn't Christian, that was Jay. I think Big Show called him Jay backstage. I think even Ric Flair did. My God. We'll talk about it. Anyway, okay, that knocks out the super chats for now. Let's start rolling into the Raw results. So, show opened up with Randy Orton. He was, of course, victorious last night in the greatest wrestling match ever, a match that we talked about it last night in the review that I was pleasantly surprised with. I really thought that it was just going to be a match, nothing special, and it was going to make it even worse, the fact that that ridiculous tagline was attached to it. But the whole way it was presented and edited, it got mixed reviews, but overall, I liked it. I thought it all flowed together nicely, and everything worked. And the additional, crowd noise that was added in to just add effect and everything, all that was done for a reason. We had a little blood in the match. We had all the little tributes to Eddie Guerrero and Stone Cold and The Rock and all that stuff. Beautiful, gorgeous ride that was, an hour long almost? So I was really happy with the match, especially after the Last Man Standing debacle at WrestleMania and that match getting a resounding negative review from everybody. So they needed to bounce back here, and they did. Randy Orton came out on top. The Edge injury has also been confirmed. We talked about that last night. It was reported by several of the more credible journalists and stuff that Edge did suffer an injury, but we weren't sure the details on it, and nothing was confirmed by him or WWE yet at that time. And considering the match last night ended in a punt, either way, it felt like we weren't going to see Edge on TV for a while anyway, and this is going to keep him out for quite a bit. It's a torn triceps. He had surgery on it, and WWE, what the F? As soon as it hits the top of the hour for Raw to start, the very first thing I see is Edge's arm opened up and his meat hanging all out. I'm like, Jesus, WWE, didn't you overdo it? Oh, my cat is knocking shit over. Didn't you overdo it on the graphic picture there? Jeezies. That reminded me of Napoleon Dynamite, you sickos. So I didn't like to see that, but at least the injury was confirmed. We know it's legit now. Edge is going to be out for quite some time, and Christian's kind of inserting himself here, taking his place, much like he did back when Edge retired in 2011. So I guess with Edge now, when he comes back, if this Orton thing's going to be done, and hopefully he can resume something else. It's a shame that he got injured, right after his return like this. Still don't know if the injury happened in the match or what, or where specifically. But now that he's out, Christian is in, and that's pretty much how the show opened up. Randy Orton came out to the ring bragging about his victory last night, and saying that he's put Edge out for a while. He tore his tricep directly off his bone or something like that, he said, and that Edge isn't going to be back until 2029. So Randy Orton's put a timetable of about a decade here on Edge returning to the ring, and that's when Christian comes out to get in Randy Orton's face. He's having none of it, and basically right off the bat challenges Christian to a non-sanctioned match. He goes, I know you're not cleared, but what if we do a non-sanctioned match, a match without sanctions? And WWE won't be liable for anything I fucking do to you, and I want the answer tonight. I want to have the match tonight, basically, Randy Orton says, and he gives Christian until the end of the night to give him his answer. So we were thinking we were going to get a Randy Orton-Christian match here, and we did. Christian wrestles with it throughout the night. He's approached backstage by a couple of people to discuss it and get advice from folks like The Big Show and Ric Flair and maybe somebody else. Finally, I guess we get to maybe halfway through the show. He comes out to the stage. Charlie Caruso comes out there, and he answers Randy Orton's challenge and accepts it. He says, you're on. So later on in the night, the non-sanctioned match is set. And when we get to the main event, we'll just fast forward to that, talk about all that now, and then we'll rewind and talk about the rest of this stuff. But when we get Randy Orton and Christian, the whole night I was thinking that we were going to see something. It was going to be, you know how Bret Hart and The Undertaker almost wrestled on Raw when Bret Hart returned in like 2010? You knew it wasn't going to happen, but it was cool that they were making it seem like it was going to happen, kind of thing. So I figured it was going to be something weird, and Ric Flair's involvement got me curious. I was almost thinking Christian might turn heel. I felt a heel turn coming. I could sense it, but I really wasn't sure what exactly they were going to do. So Randy Orton, Christian make their way to the ring. Christian's kind of just in street clothes, dressed all in black. Ric Flair then comes out during the introductions before the guys, before the bell really even rings, and he tries to convince Christian to not do it. He goes, I just spoke to Edge on the phone. He says, you don't have to do it. You got nothing to prove to this guy. Come on, just let it go. Let's get out of here. And Christian very dramatically says, I have to. I must do it, Ric Flair. So Flair's like, oh, okay, do what you got to do. And then he starts to leave the ring, and then I believe the bell rings, and that's when Flair gets back in, low blows Christian. He goes down to his knees, and then Randy Orton nails Christian with a hard punt. He's down, rolls him over, pins him 1, 2, 3, and then spends the last 3 or 4 minutes of the show just talking shit to him. just in his ear, yeah, I told you I'm sick and you got to watch out for me, or whatever the hell he was saying. Just talking smack to him. Very good stuff. Very sadistic side of Randy Orton that I honestly never really get tired of seeing. And that was all good stuff. And the show goes off the air with Christian being put in a neck brace, loaded onto a stretcher, the whole deal. So now he'll be out, and maybe he'll be off TV as well. And however long Edge's rehab is, maybe they come back together to, I don't know, attack Randy Orton, or maybe have a nostalgia tag title run. I don't know. But it's a shame about Edge. Would have been really cool if he would have been able to work SummerSlam and, you know, be back and having matches by the time fans arrive back into the arenas. But it's a shame. Not quite sure the timetable. I'm sure it's been talked about. What is it? Anywhere from 4 to 7, maybe months, something like that. So he'll be out a while, likely till close to the end of the year is probably when we should start realistically thinking about Edge again. And then hell, they might just hold him off and just hit reset, have him come back at the Royal Rumble. Don't know. We'll see, but that's how the whole Randy Orton and Christian thing ended up. And now Randy Orton's going to be going into Extreme Rules, potentially to have an opponent. Does Christian come out of retirement here to actually have a match with Randy Orton at Extreme Rules, or was this it? And if this is it, what does Randy Orton do at Extreme Rules if he is in fact going to be facing Drew McIntyre, you know, at SummerSlam? I suppose they could do a number one contenders thing or something. You know, Drew and Lashley are obviously probably going to work Extreme Rules. Maybe they put Randy Orton in the ring with, I don't know, somebody else on Raw. The winner faces the champion at SummerSlam. And maybe that's how he gets the title shot. I don't know. But, you know, barring a Brock return, I don't see any other legitimate challenger for Drew at the second biggest pay-per-view of the year other than Randy Orton. Feels like it's got to be him. And I kind of hope it is, to be honest. So anyway, that's that. We'll move on to the rest of the results of Raw here in just a second. Let me do a special shout out to a couple of more super chats. DM23, thank you for the $2. The Howard Finkel tribute last night was amazing. Loved that. And Steven Scott, thanks, dude, for the very generous $20. Have you ever done a WCW Nitro retro review from 9/14/98? It was the Ric Flair return and the WCW title match, Sting and Goldberg. Yeah, that was right down in my neighborhood in South Carolina. I remember that night. That was the Four Horsemen thing, right, when they came back? If you go back and watch, Goldberg was getting some boos and Sting was the heavy favorite. I'll go back and check out that Nitro. I want to do more WCW reviews. I've only done a few, and I don't think I've ever done a Nitro. So it might be fun to start going back and looking at some of the old Nitros again. I'd be totally into that idea. And I remember that show well because if I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong here, but that might have been one of the last times ever that they beat WWE in the ratings. I think, you know, because after WrestleMania 14, that's when WWE started winning in the ratings, but they weren't winning every week. They were trading a few there, and they were a lot closer. And I think, but by the time you got to September 98, the wheels were starting to fall off for WCW, and WWE was just getting hotter and hotter. So the tide was really turning. I think in 98, you know, the Goldberg match against Hogan in the Georgia Dome, I'm pretty sure they won that night. Might have won a couple of other weeks here or there, but that one there, I think, might have been the last one. I can't think of another Nitro that drew that much interest, you know, that they actually were able to beat WWE in the ratings. We have to go back and look at the results, but I remember that show well. I'd be willing to look at it again. Thank you, man, for the very generous $20. And Devlin, good to see you as always in here hanging out. Thanks for the $5. Glad to see fans back in the show, even if it's like only 20. Yeah. People thought I was crazy when I told them fans were returning tonight. Yeah, they did allow some outside people in the audience tonight for Raw. Apparently, the word is this was a lot of friends and family of some of the wrestlers, so a very select audience. Tickets weren't for sale, nothing like that, but they're starting to put more people there. I'm still not a fan, though, of the plexiglass. When you look at Dynamite, there's a lot more people. I think they're doing the same thing WWE is because, you know, if you look in the distance there in Daly's place, there's little pockets of people all over the place. It's not all just wrestlers. It's got to be friends or family or production crew or something. They've got a lot of people out there making a lot of noise. So I think that's good that WWE's got more people than normal and they're starting to put, you know, non-developmental people in the audience here, but still making them all stand. The plexiglass, all that is just a little bit much. I think they should consider taking down the plexiglass. I don't think it really works that well. I think it's... I gave it a shot at first. I thought it looked interesting when I first saw it. I'm like, oh, that's different. But now it's like, they got to lose that. I hope they do. But, this is the start of it. And we'll see. We got to remember, too, they're in the Performance Center. They're not at Full Sail. So if they're able to go back over there at some point and work and have a limited audience, they could put, maybe 200 people in there if they really spread them out in distance and everything, if they're allowed to go back in there at some point. Otherwise, they're going to be trapped within the confines of that little ass Performance Center. But it's a start. We said that it's not going to be like a flip you switch and then tomorrow everything's back to normal. You're going to slowly wade into the water until you get all the way back to where you were. So we'll see what happens from here, but this is a start, the beginning stages, baby steps, and hopefully better things are in front of us. Ian Dunn, I don't know. I'm going to be talking about that later on when we discuss the the title match with Nia Jax and Asuka. I've been curious where the hell Shayna Baszler is, and curious what the direction for the title is going to be at SummerSlam. I fully expect Asuka to be champion at SummerSlam. I never for 1 second thought she was going to lose last night to Nia Jax, and I didn't think she was going to lose tonight to her either, because there's a lot of heels right now, a lot of heel contenders. So if Nia Jax was the champion, I don't know what the hell you would do at SummerSlam. Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler, Nia Jax and Charlotte, no, and no. So for me, Asuka's got to be champion going in to SummerSlam to take on either Shayna Baszler or Charlotte or both, or potentially even Nia Jax, because she did get a quick roll-up on Nia Jax, so maybe Nia thinks she earns another shot or some shit. I hope not. Hopefully that's the end of that. But I don't know, and I'm curious what Charlotte's role is going to be, because now that the NXT title seems to be not on, her agenda at all anymore, she's back, and where does that leave? When it comes to dominant heels, Shayna Baszler was pretty dominant on the show prior to her just not being on TV right now. So now Charlotte's going to be there as well. Is one of them going to have to go babyface, or is WWE going to turn Shayna babyface just so Charlotte can beat her? I don't know. I'm curious, though, what's going to happen at SummerSlam. I think it's a likely possibility that Asuka drops the title to somebody, but I didn't expect her to drop it any earlier than SummerSlam. And if it was up to me, she wouldn't drop it until next SummerSlam, but unfortunately, that's not really that realistic. But we'll get into that in a bit when we talk about the title match. Lisa, good to see you. How goes it? It goes well. It goes very well tonight. It was a beautiful damn day today in San Diego. Perfect weather, not too hot, not too anything, not a cloud in the damn sky. Had the day off. Windows were open, birds were chirping, sun was shining. Good stuff. Let's see. There's one more from Devlin. Thank you, dude, for 5 more. I have a friend who lives with a SmackDown ref. Oh, yeah, you said that the other day. Which ref? I don't know any of their names, so I don't know why it matters. Who was invited to the show but didn't go due to being out of town. Oh, that's interesting. Cool. Yeah, so they probably, if you know people, you probably got a little chance to be on Raw. Pretty cool. All right, where did we leave off? We talked about the main event stuff and the opening promo, all the Randy Orton Christian stuff. The first match of the night was Kevin Owens taking on Angel Garza. Still a lot of dissension in Zelina's crew. They were all backstage, talking smack, and Andrade comes out and shakes on Garza's hand. He says, good luck. And he's out in the ringside area with him. And Owens beats Garza. Owens beats Angel Garza with a Stone Cold Stunner. During the match, there was some dissension on the outside of the ring with all 3 of them. Zelina gets pissed and actually leaves and walks away. After Owens wins and he leaves, she's back in the ring and she's chewing out both guys, basically trying to rally her troops, and she storms off and leaves. Not a big fan of Zelina's cape. I think all 3 of these people dress like complete fucking maniacs. I normally like Zelina's outfits, but I think the cape was a little bit much tonight. But Garza and Andrade both, just lick their wounds and follow her right back, and she's like, my way or the highway, so she seems just delightful to deal with. So still, they have not gone through with the full-blown split of this little crew, but it's coming. After that, we had a Lashley and MVP promo. They come out to the ring. MVP is furious at Lana, blaming her for everything. Says she's the reason that Lashley is not the champ right now. It's all her fault. She had to make it about herself by coming out there. Then Lana shows up and pleading her case, and I love Bobby. I do everything for my Bobby. She says. And I sacrifice for him and all this nonsense. Lashley does not defend her, does not stick up for her. He's pissed at her too, and said that you're so concerned with social media and all you care about is getting likes, and you're so self-centered, and you had to come out last night and not honor my very simple request of please don't come out and fuck with my matches, and you just couldn't do it and you couldn't resist, and because of that, I'm not the champ. I'm sick of your shit. I want a divorce. So he didn't say it with the conviction that Vince McMahon did when he said the same thing to Linda years ago. He was just like, I want a divorce. So finally, we knew this wasn't going to last. This fake marriage is now going to get fake divorced. Great. We'll see how long that drags out, if they'll do another divorce court, if there's going to be a segment to sign these divorce papers. Whatever it's going to be is going to be stupid, but at least it looks like it's about over. So we'll fast forward to involving these two. We'll talk about all this together because it led to a tag team match and all sorts of crazy shit going on. So we're going to fast forward to later on in the show when R-Truth approaches Bobby Lashley and MVP backstage. And R-Truth was very kind. He felt bad about Lashley losing last night, so he wanted to offer him his condominiums, even though I think he meant condolences, which is hilarious. And he even called the Claymore by some funny name. He took you to Play-Doh Town or whatever the hell he said, was hysterical. He winds up running away from Lashley and MVP. They later find him in a different part of the Performance Center underneath the ring where he's somehow fighting off those ninjas. And we're going to be talking about those ninjas in just a second. What the hell that shit is all about, I have no idea. So he's trying to fight off the ninjas who are after his 24/7 title. He comes out from under the ring. He's face-to-face with those two. Drew comes to back him up because there is a tag match scheduled for later on in the night. R-Truth and McIntyre taking on MVP and Bobby Lashley. Well, the four of them start talking, and R-Truth basically winds up offering themselves up in a winner-take-all match. Basically, they're going to put everything on the line in the winner-take-all match, including Drew McIntyre's WWE title, which means if R-Truth gets pinned in this tag team match, Drew McIntyre is going to lose the title. Now, once they made this, I wasn't too concerned with Drew losing. He was pissed. He looked a little bit perturbed at R-Truth. Dude, why would you do that and open up your mouth? And now I got to worry about losing my belt that I've worked so hard for because you could screw some shit up. And he is not happy at all. And he's begging R-Truth to kind of just do what he's told and please don't screw up kind of thing. So Drew has now got to worry about this. And now we have an impromptu title match. So 2 title matches, men's and women's, were announced tonight for the show. Neither one, honestly, or ironically, was the main event. So we'll fast forward to the tag team match now. It's R-Truth and Drew McIntyre taking on Bobby Lashley and MVP. This is a WWE title match. Drew's title is on the line here. Truth with a pretty longer than normal rap in his intro, which I thought was pretty cool. He is just a treasure. I love R-Truth. I'm not even mad at him for putting Drew McIntyre's title on the line. In the end, luckily, Drew McIntyre's title was not in any jeopardy here. I didn't think it was. Plus, this is a tag team match. Lashley doesn't have to take the pin. They can do something here to set up an Extreme Rules match. Feels like they kind of did that here. Drew McIntyre was able to hit a Claymore on MVP, and he had the confidence enough in R-Truth to give him the tag and let R-Truth get the pin. I think he splashed him or threw him off the top rope onto MVP, and R-Truth got the pin. And it was funny, too, because R-Truth, I think, thought that in a winner-take-all match, because he said it backstage, he said, if we win, I become Becky 2 belts. So I think Truth briefly might have thought that he won the WWE title, but of course that didn't happen. And Lashley and Drew McIntyre will live to fight another day. So we'll see. I guess that's going to be, like I said, at Extreme Rules, which makes sense. Just get that shit over with. I don't think anybody really wants to see Drew and Lashley again, but what do? Do you start a brand new opponent for McIntyre at Extreme Rules, or do you just hold him off the card altogether, which is not necessarily a bad thing? You can just have Strowman defend the title and Drew can sit one out. But considering how many people are already on the shelf right now, it's not something I think WWE would want to do. So he needs an opponent for Extreme Rules, but it's better to blow off a feud at a pay-per-view like that than start one. And SummerSlam can be the place for that. So I think Drew and Lashley face next month in a stip match, something extreme, probably just an Extreme Rules match or something, maybe an ambulance match. Something like that. Something very violent. Drew will beat him, end that feud, and then go into SummerSlam, I guess, to face Randy Orton. That's what I think we're all thinking right now. And so far, that's what the evidence is pointing to, which is all right with me. It's really okay. I'm not on the edge of my seat with Drew and Lashley, but feuds like that generally don't go one pay-per-view. They don't. So for this to go 2, I don't think there's any reason to freak the fuck out about it. It's kind of the way things go. All right. Before I lose my place in line here, let's see what else we're going to talk about. Oh, God, this shit was all over the place, too. Let's talk about Seth Rollins and Rey Mysterio and Dominic first. Then we'll talk about the Street Profits and Viking Raiders crap. The other big advertised segment on the show was Rey Mysterio confronting Seth Rollins. Now, I think this is like the second week in a row that they've teased Mysterio and advertise him for the show, but then he still chickens out and he doesn't show up on the show. I don't know. So earlier on in the day, this whole angle got really stupid. Rey Mysterio on Twitter posts some screenshots of a supposed text interaction with him and his son, or text exchange between him and Dominic, where he's like, Dominic, where are you? And Dominic's like, it's okay, Dad. I had to go take care of something. Well, what do you mean? Where are you going, son? He's like, I'm going to the PC to confront Seth. Like, I got this. And he's like, come on, your mother and I are very worried, or something like that. It's just stupid and cheesy as shit. So Dominic basically ran away from home to go to the PC and confront Seth Rollins, and Rey didn't go after him or anything like that. Dominic is just there. Seth Rollins is aware of that. He's interviewed backstage real creepily, being like, I know Dominic is here and I'll find him, or something like that. He then goes out to the ring and he says, he knows Dominic is there. Buddy Murphy and Austin Theory are out looking for him. Rey Mysterio then shows up on the Tron. He's begging Seth, like, look, this is between you and me. Please don't bring my son into it. And Seth, I'm liking Seth so much more as this heel than a babyface. He's borderline good now, like as far as, how he's coming off on TV and stuff. I really like his demeanor. I like how silly he is, and he's even telling Rey, you've got me all wrong. I would never harm your son. Bullshit, So I just kind of like the way he's so insincere, and he does it with a smile on his face. I'm kind of liking it. I'm getting it slightly behind. I'm more invested now in this Messiah bullshit than I have since it started. So Seth then finds himself, what is he? He's on his knees or something in the ring, telling Rey he's got nothing to worry about. And that's when Dominic comes from behind, hops the barricade, gets in the ring and attacks Seth Rollins from behind, beats him down. And Theory and Buddy Murphy then hit the ring. They kind of corner Dominic, but he gets away. He scurries away from everybody and is able to hop the barricade and get away. And they never even grab him. I thought for sure this was going to be the end for him. And next week we would have the funeral of Dominic on Raw. It would be a deal where Murphy and Austin Theory are holding him and he's helpless, and Seth is slapping him around in front of a helpless Rey. I still think that's a segment that's going to happen, and it'll probably happen when Rey is there in person. They'll hold Rey and make him watch Seth beat the shit out of poor Dominic. But at least for right now, it was kind of nice to see Dominic get the last laugh there. I popped a little bit for that, to actually get some revenge and not go the predictable route where he's then overpowered and beaten down and raised this dejected father that is now out for revenge. They're making this a little bit more interesting. And I will say this too about Dominic. Kid's pretty impressive. Couple times we've seen him in the ring. He's moved around well in there. Remember when he was taking all those suplexes from Brock? He looked good in that whole situation back at Survivor Series, I think, right? And now he's in the ring here attacking Seth, getting away from the Messiah or the faction and scurrying away. This kid might be pretty good when he finally does get in the ring. He might not be some, talentless kid that just happens to have a famous dad wrestler that they're just throwing in the ring and see how he does. He ain't David Flair. He's doing pretty good. And I think just a little bit we've seen of him, how he moves around, and considering his dad is training him to wrestle, who last I checked, Rey Mysterio is pretty good. Dominic might surprise us. He might carry on the family name here in a completely different way. He's not going to be a cruiserweight because the dude's pretty big. But I see good things for Dominic. I kind of really hope he turns out to be a good wrestler and he has a long career in the business. I want to see that for him. Would love it. So I like the whole thing. I still think it's going to wind up at some point very badly for Dominic. He's going to find himself in a tight spot. Maybe even at Extreme Rules. I think they've finally announced Rey again for next week, but maybe they do some sort of a segment at Extreme Rules, much like they did with Shawn and his wife and Jericho at SummerSlam that year, where Dominic and Rey are in the ring and then they get attacked or something happens setting up the SummerSlam match between Mysterio and Seth, although we still got to go 8 more weeks to even get to that, so that's a long time. And who knows, we might even get that tag match that Rey has wanted so badly. There's kind of a tag team there can be made out of Seth's group. You could put Murphy and Theory together to take on Dominic and Ray or something. It could lead to anywhere. But I guess, with the way they're building this whole thing up and how long it's being drug out and how it's clearly going to wind up getting personal here if Seth and Ray is going to be penciled for SummerSlam. Feels like it. But they could set up an Extreme Rules match first and then do one at SummerSlam. I don't know. Don't know how that's going to go. All right, the Street Profits and Viking Raiders, this was a mess. They're backstage. They're talking about doing a sequel to their big cinematic match that they had the night before. We get the Ninjas again. The Ninjas approaching backstage with Akira Tozawa. There's a giant ninja who I had missed last night. Some of you were asking me if it was Shaq, and I'm like, oh, I missed the big guy in the ninja outfit. Well, I see him now, and when all I was looking at, I wasn't paying attention to how tall he was. I was only looking at his eyes, and I was thinking it was Titus O'Neil under there. I'm like, oh, that's like Ninja Titus. But then when they did like a pullback shot, a wide shot, I'm like, oh, that ain't Titus. That guy's over 7 feet tall, and apparently I didn't catch his name, but he's a Performance Center kid. He's 7'3". Freaking huge, and this is his debut. He's a giant ninja. So the ninjas don't seem like they're meant to be taken seriously at all. This seems to be we're good, I think. So the ninjas. All right, we might have had a little break in the action there, not sure. But anyway, the ninja stuff is such a joke. This giant kid, I don't know how long this is going to last for him, or if he's going to find himself being unmasked and start a new gimmick or whatever. But a lot of people on social media were really crapping on this whole idea and this whole segment. And that's the thing too, when you make such a big creative change the way they did, ousting Heyman and inserting Bruce, anything bad now that we see creatively, it's going to be like, oh my God, this is what happens when Bruce Pritchard takes over, where, we've been seeing this crap between the Street Profits and Viking Raiders before Heyman left. So I don't think anything really would have been different here, Heyman or no Heyman. This is just silly shit that we're seeing for some reason. And later on, you get them all. I think you get the Viking Profits. It's like they do like an 8-man thing. They set up a match to where all 4 guys are going to take on the Ninjas in a match. The Big Show shows up to help out the Street Profits and the Viking Raiders. So this contest of anything you can do, we can do better, has formed a bond between the two teams to where they're at odds with each other, but they still come together to fight common enemies kind of thing. That's what they did here, with a little bit of help from the Big Show. And then the Big Show would approach them backstage later on as the 4 guys are discussing how to continue this ridiculous contest. And that's when I think it was Eric suggested a chariot race or something next week. And I'm like, oh my God, a fucking chariot race. Luckily, the voice of reason, Big Show, shows up. They thank him for his help earlier on. And he goes, dudes, if you're trying to figure out a way to settle this, because apparently all these contests that they've been having, it's tied. I guess the score is tied. So they need this rubber match. And Big Show, which is hilarious, it's amazing to me that someone has to explain to 4 wrestlers how to settle a beef. And he's like, look, idiots, you're tag team champions. This contest is tied. Next week, tiebreaker match for the titles. Winner wins. Winner wins everything. You win the contest, you win the title. That's how you do it. How stupid are you? And then they're like, oh yeah, it's a pretty good idea. So anyway, next week, tag team title match is set. Street Profits, Viking Raiders. Hopefully that puts an end to this whole deal. And wow, I can't believe I'm about to say this. Who the hell are the champs? Street Profits? Street Profits, right? So maybe we'll see a title change next week. Maybe we won't. I don't know. But this whole thing is getting kind of silly, and I don't know why Big Show is allowed to make matches, but I'm fine with him doing that because at least he might have helped put an end to this. We might have Big Show to thank for this ridiculous shit to finally go away. And I'm excited about that. And speaking of tag team title matches, we have 2 next week. The women's tag team titles are going to be on the line as well. Assuming, of course, Sasha and Bayley. Well, actually, I don't know about Wednesday night. Is the match with Tegan and Shotzi for the titles or not? Either way, they're not dropping the title on Wednesday. Doesn't matter. Next week, they're going to have to defend the titles against the Iconics. They came out during a Bayley and Sasha promo, and because they had challenged them earlier in the night. That's right. It was, who the hell was it? Liv Morgan and Natty. That's right. Liv Morgan and Natalya taking on the Iconics in a tag team match. Iconics beat them. Peyton Royce pinned Liv Morgan. After the match, they got on the mic and challenged the tag team champs for next week. Then when Bayley and Sasha came out to do a promo, they were interrupted by the Iconics, who said, "We want an answer." And they push around. It's Bayley's birthday, by the way. Who gives a shit? They push around Sasha a little bit. Bayley gets pissed and says, "We accept." And the match is on for next week. So we have 2 tag team title matches next week already announced. So twice in a row, 2 Mondays in a row, we get 2 titles on the line. So we'll see. I don't expect really a title change in the women's match, but I suppose it could happen with the men. We'll see. And also in that whole deal, Sasha didn't seem too pleased that Bayley once again spoke up for the team and said that they'll, accept a challenge. And also, tying into that, backstage, they had Natalya, who seems to be pissed at Liv Morgan, giving Liv Morgan shit. You suck and, you're worthless or whatever, and runs Liv Morgan off. And she's like, I've built this division brick by brick, and everybody just treats me like shit and disrespects me. And that's when Lana kind of is lurking in the shadows. And she, of course, was recently told that her husband wants a divorce from her. So she's upset. So you got these 2 scorn chicks. Looks like they're going to be forming some sort of an alliance. Natty's going to turn into this bitchy heel. She's going to team up with Lana. I don't know if maybe they're setting up Lana to maybe be in the ring a little bit more, because during the Lana confrontation in the ring with MVP and Lashley, MVP was like, "When was the last time you put on some boots and got in the ring and did anything?" And considering Natty is kind of like a locker room leader, she's a wrestler that's kind of been there since before the women's revolution started. Maybe she can kind of give Lana some pointers and teach her how to wrestle, and that can be a little alliance there, and they would both be annoying as shit. We could call them the Kaduki Warriors. That might be fun. Either way, it's going to suck, but it might be better than what they're currently doing. So that all ties into it as well, and maybe we got a new tag team on our hands. We need more teams, right? So Natty and Lana aren't doing shit on their own, so put them together. Sometimes the best tag teams are formed that way. Since I'm all over the place here on my Raw results, I also have the Apollo Crews and Shelton Benjamin match. Shelton's kind of giving Apollo shit for you should have taken MVP up on his offer. You're never going to be able to win without him kind of thing. And during the match, Shelton tries to use the ropes for leverage on a pin, but the referee catches him. And then Apollo rolls up Shelton and does the same thing and gets the win. So I kind of like that. I like that Apollo, this overly happy, smiley, pleasant babyface, isn't afraid to do what he's got to do to retain his title. So still don't know if that's going to result in some big faction being formed with like an Apollo Crews heel turn along with Lashley. If you add a Shelton Benjamin, maybe a couple of those other NXT guys that MVP was kind of recruiting. I don't necessarily think it needs to be an all black stable or anything like that, but if you wanted to, incorporate a little bit of main roster guys and NXT guys, I think that would be all right. Shelton, I can't believe he's been back and they haven't done it. I've always loved Shelton Benjamin. I was excited when he came back and he signed all those years ago, and they've literally done nothing with him since. So putting him in a faction now, making him, kind of that veteran that can teach, try it. We'll see. Need to do something with him. He's good. All right. And then what else did I miss? Was that all the stuff? I really jumped all over the place on that. I apologize. I guess I didn't really talk about the Asuka and Nia Jax match, did I? Because that nearly ended again. Last night ended in a double countout. I think I said DQ last night in the review, which I apologize for. But the double countout was last night, so they had the rematch tonight, and that's something that we called. We talked about that last night. I said, okay, WWE, the double countout is stupid. That fucking annoys me. But you also have a 3-hour Raw tomorrow. What the hell are we going to see tomorrow? Just do it again. And I was like, you know what? I'm okay with that finish if they book the rematch tomorrow and Asuka beats her. Nia Jax is not going to win the title. Nia Jax isn't going to beat Asuka for the same reason that Jinder wasn't going to win the Money in the Bank. Just not going to happen no matter how cynical you are. Doesn't make any sense right now. So Asuka having another title match just so they can say on Raw tonight, we've got another title match, might be a better selling point for the show. And it can finally, hopefully, end that deal. But I was hoping it would just be a clean, solid victory for your strong champion. I don't understand why she can't just beat Nia Jax and put her down. And I'm not even a Nia Jax hater to the degree that everybody else was or is, but I feel like Asuka should just be beating people. She's just like McIntyre in my mind. She's a dominant champion, so let her be dominant. So in this match, Nia Jax shoves the referee, which is Nicholas's dad, whatever his name is. He's not taking any of that shit. He's like, are you kidding me? You're going to push me? He goes to DQ her, but before he can call for the bell, Asuka rolls up Nia Jax, and he was like, okay, fuck it. Fuck the bell. I'll go over here and count her down instead, and counts her 1, 2, 3, and Asuka beats her. So I would have rather seen Asuka tap her out, put her in the armbar, and have Nia Jax tapping, but you can't have everything, and WWE certainly isn't going to please me all the time. So I guess this is good enough, but at least it wasn't another DQ or anything like that. And I guess that'll move on Asuka, hopefully, to something else, unless they try to do a third match here, much like Lashley and Drew. They try to do something at Extreme Rules one more final time between these two, before Asuka then heads to SummerSlam to face somebody. And I don't know. I don't know if I can see WWE doing a Charlotte and Shayna match. I can't see him doing that. It would be great if that was a number one contenders match and the winner faces Asuka at SummerSlam, but I don't think WWE is going to book that match because, number one, they're not going to beat Charlotte. But number two, do you want Charlotte and Asuka again? You just did that match on TV. We've seen it a few times in recent months. And now you're going to try to headline SummerSlam with it? I don't know. I'd much rather see Asuka and Shayna, a confrontation we've never seen, than Asuka and Charlotte again. But, you know, Charlotte can't just be sitting around doing nothing either. So I know the fans would love that, but she ain't a catering type of girl. She's going to be on the pay-per-view, and she's going to be in a match. And usually it's for the title. It's just the way it goes. So I think that's it for Monday Night Raw. We'll go in, plug some gaps here, fill anything in, anything I missed. And I also want to talk about in a little bit, we'll talk a little bit about the Undertaker Last Ride Chapter 4, which I got a look at last night, and kind of gave us a little bit of an internal preview of Chapter 5. And I don't know, we got some discussion to do about that. I'm pretty concerned about a couple of things. But anyway, let me knock out the Super Dupers. Who did I miss? Devlin, I got you. Oh, just Barry? Oh, no, there's a couple of them. Barry, you are next. Good to see you, man. Welcome back. Thank you for the $5. How about for a Hell in the Cell show? The glass protecting the fans is replaced with a cage wall all around. That would be weird, but the wrestlers could use it as a weapon, you know. It would be an interesting looking set. The only problem is if you're doing that to try to protect the fans from the virus, then that's stupid because it's a cage, you know, the air will go right through either way. But if you just want to do it for effect, like add to the special pay-per-view set, maybe. But you're already looking, if you're a fan, and I've seen cage matches live. They're almost a little bit harder. They're easier to see, I think, than TV, but they're still very hard to see. So it's already tough to watch a cage match, especially live, because you don't have a camera inside the ring that you can watch. You're watching it through the cage no matter what. If you're watching it through the cage and then through another cage, that's a lot of cage, and that obstructs your view a lot. So I don't know if it would look cool, but I don't know if it would realistically work. Victor Cologne, good to see ya. You remember when feuds would last for a year? Hell yeah, I remember when they would last for longer than a year. Back in the day, man. Some of them still do, sort of. You know, Ciampa and Gargano, and some like Edge and Orton arguably could have lasted for 10 if you really stretch it out. Lisa, good to see you. Thank you very much for the $2 as well. WWE Wrestling or Day Soap, Young and Wrestling Soap. You mean calling a pro wrestling show that? I'm down with that. Same thing. WWE makes no bones about that. They've gone as far as saying that. We're a soap opera. We're a soap opera for nerds and dudes. Oh, yeah, thanks. You guys smack that thumbs up button for me. I would really appreciate it. It was nice to see some of our numbers a little bit back up to normal last night after a pretty dismal week. But last night for the Backlash review was pretty fun and pretty good. And we made the best of it last night. So I appreciate you guys joining last night and joining tonight. Please share this video, and we are dangerously close to 30,000. Back in the day, we would have had this. We would have gotten 100 subscribers a night, and we would have been there forever ago. But I believe we're about 40 subscribers away from 30K. So normally we'd get that in the next half an hour back in the day, but subscribers are climbing a little slower these days. So it'll be in a couple days or later on this week, something like that. Ian Dunn, you're going for Shayna Baszler winning the title at SummerSlam. I'd be perfectly fine with that. I feel like that's what they were going to do if Becky wouldn't have gotten pregnant. They were building to that, and now that Asuka might be the placeholder there. But my big concern is, where does that leave Charlotte? She's not one to usually kind of do nothing. So I don't know. Are they going to try to turn Charlotte back into a babyface, perhaps? You know, I kind of wondered if they were testing the waters with Charlotte and Asuka, and maybe they can have a quick taste, because you know how they always do that? They put the tag team titles on two big stars that are kind of like half-ass feuding, or maybe are feuding. So maybe Charlotte and Asuka get a quick 3-week run with the titles or something, and they're testing things to turn Charlotte babyface, but I don't think the fans want that. They don't want Charlotte to be a babyface. They have no interest in that at all. But if it's going to be Asuka and Baszler, which I hope that it is, I just hope WWE can resist themselves not sticking Charlotte in there and making everything a fucking triple threat like they did at WrestleMania and like they've done so many other times. So they'd have to refrain from doing that. But if they do, what does Charlotte do? You know, they could implement that brand-to-brand bullshit and put her in a different match, but I don't think there's room for that on the SmackDown side, because I think that's going to be Bayley and Sasha, at least I hope, for the title on the SmackDown side. And hopefully it's going to be like Ripley and Io on NXT. So it really, Charlotte, you know, Mrs. Overexposed, who had no match tonight, was only in one segment backstage with her dad, wasn't on the pay-per-view at all last night. I don't know where these overexposed things come from. Hell, the Iconics were in 2 segments tonight. The Iconics were on the show 10 times longer than Charlotte was. They were in 2 different segments, a match and a segment. So at least she's not shoved up our asses. Bayley and Sasha are the ones that are overexposed right now because they're on all 3 shows. Realistically, did they really need to be on Raw tonight? No, they didn't. They could have easily skipped Raw tonight, had their match on NXT. They were probably on Raw tonight as a way to promote the match on NXT, which makes sense, but they didn't really need to be there. They could have just worked NXT, then been on Friday Night SmackDown, and then maybe shown up next week on Raw to be confronted and challenged by the Iconics right there on the spot, and you just have an impromptu match. What's the difference? Is the ratings going to change if you advertise a match like that ahead of time? Iconics against Bayley and Sasha. Oh, got to tune in for that. No, it's not going to fucking matter at all. So they could have just done it that way next week if they wanted to, instead of having the girls on all 3 shows, which will now continue into next week now that they're guaranteed to be on Raw again. So we're going to get them the next 4 shows in a row. We're going to get these ladies. So is that too much? It was too much when it was Charlotte. But is it okay if it's Bayley and Sasha? That same rule doesn't apply to them? Just wondering, asking for a friend. Oh, thanks again, Lisa, for 2 more. Cheers for a beer. I wish I had a beer on me. What the hell's wrong with me? Last night I even said that. I'm like, shit, I forgot to get beer. Don't worry, I'll have some for tomorrow. And then I just procrastinate. I go live. I'm like, shit, I got no beer. But anyway, Thursday for Money in the Bank 2011. We're going to be having some cold ones. We're going to need it for that pipe bomb. It's going to be a fun stream. Good to see you, JL. Welcome. Vince wants the belt on Nia. I don't think Nia's getting the belt right now. I'd send Nia over to SmackDown or something. That's what I do. We're going to talk about the last ride in a minute. Just want to peek back over here to the chat, see if there's anything else we need to talk about. And any other news that we need to discuss. Talked about the COVID stuff. Tori Wilson's dog has passed away. That's really sad. Probably a pretty old dog. 17 years. Holy shit. Man, if I can get that many years out of my cat, that would still give me like 6 more. That would make me really, really happy. Man, that's a shame. 17 years. The same dog that's been on... So she had that dog on TV all those years ago? That's the same dog? Damn. Those little ones live for a long time, don't they? Damn. It's a long time. That's a shame, though. That's just freaking heartbreaking. But at the same time, hell, 17 years. You can't ask for more than that for a pet. All right. Condolences out to Tori Wilson. She's the greatest. All right, why don't we talk about Last Ride? Watched it last night. Now, they chronicled the Goldberg stuff. They talked about, which was interesting, they talked a lot about the WrestleMania WrestleMania 35 from last year in New York and how Undertaker wasn't booked for that. And they showed a lot of footage of him arriving there for the weekend, kind of just hanging out, took his daughter to Access and went around the locker room and hobnobbed with all the wrestlers and sat there and gave advice and said hello to people and socialized and hung out at WrestleMania. He was like Dennis Stamp. He wasn't booked. He should have brought his trampoline and weights. But apparently while he's there, he says that, that's when he got the text, can you be ready for Raw the next night? But he didn't have his gear with him, so he had to fly all the way home in the middle of the weekend, a WrestleMania weekend, fly home, get his gear, and get it back so he could do Raw at the Barclays the next night. They showed footage at Gorilla of him and Vince during WrestleMania, and, he's like, Vince said something like a real pro would have brought his gear, and he's like, a real pro would have booked me originally, motherfucker. So it was kind of funny to see their little back and forth with each other. That was kind of cute. And I didn't even remember that he showed up the next night on Raw, and I think all he did really was confront Elias, which kind of sucked. And they also talked about the StarCast stuff, and that was what I wanted to hear about, because I had read Sean Ross Sapp's review of it. I guess he got an early screening of it, and he talked about that, StarCast and AEW were pretty much brought up in this. And I remember when the story broke, kind of almost like defending The Undertaker a little bit. Like, a lot of people were like, holy shit, he's booked for StarCast. This is probably a big deal. Vince is probably flipping out. And I'm like, I don't think that's a big deal. He's not going to AEW. There's no way. He's The Undertaker. He can do whatever the hell he wants. He probably has they have no say in what he does with his life. If he wants to go do an autograph signing and an interview or an appearance, he can do that. I don't think it's a big deal. Well, it was a big deal. Apparently, it was a really big deal. And he said that it strained his relationship a little bit with Vince McMahon. When he called him up, he's like, what are you doing? The other company's running a pay-per-view side by side with this thing. And Undertaker claims that he didn't even really know that. He just thought that he was going to Vegas to do a signing. He doesn't pay attention to anything else. And he was oblivious to the fact that AEW is working side by side. But he's like, even if they were, I'm not going there. Like, I would never, that's crazy. Which is what I said. I'm like, Undertaker, there's some people that aren't just going to make that jump, and if Undertaker didn't go to WCW all those years ago, he ain't going to AEW right at the end of his career before he's even in the Hall of Fame. Not happening. So he kind of told Vince, he's like, why would you think I would even do that? But it was enough for Vince to kind of say, all right, we got to pull you, and you got to sign a new contract with us, and I don't want this ever to come close to happening again. And he said that it did strain the relationship a little bit, but they were able to patch things up. They're cool now, and Undertaker is WWE for life, which even if he did StarCast, he still would have been. But that was kind of interesting for them to bring that up, and I am surprised that it bothered Vince that much. That was something that I thought, in my heart of hearts, my instinct was telling me was being blown out of proportion. That's what I thought. I was totally wrong. It really apparently upset Vince. So that was really interesting to see. And, they talked about the Goldberg match in Saudi Arabia and how fucked up that was and how awful that was. And again, much like the DX match in Saudi Arabia, just what a horrible disaster it was, and how it's really got the Undertaker second guessing himself. And at the end of the documentary, I had almost forgotten about this. It's been 1 year now. I completely forgot that he came back last year at Extreme Rules and worked with Shane McMahon in the tag match with Drew. Because when I saw that, I was like, what the hell is that? I'm like, oh, yeah, that's the same pay-per-view that, Becky and Seth had the mixed tag, right? Completely deleted from my memory, even though it was a year ago. I'm like, oh, yeah, that's right. So him and Shane kind of got into it again. And you guys have to help me. Has he wrestled since then and the Boneyard match? Because after the match, they showed him, and I remember now, when I watched the highlights, I remember commenting last year on his outfit. He almost looked like he was wearing 99 Ministry gear, with the top part of his gear. And they showed backstage after the match at Gorilla how he's talking to Vince. He's like, hey, I'm sorry to spring this on you, but I think I'm done. And Vince is like, for real? He's like, yeah, I got to go. I got to think. I got to evaluate. And Vince is like, whatever you got to do, man. It's all good. And, we'll talk later. But now I don't remember if he's wrestled in between that and the Boneyard match. I don't think he did. Maybe he did. But I don't think he did. So they ended the whole documentary. The whole thing ended with him walking into a hallway with AJ Styles. And that's going to be part 5. They're going to talk about that. And is this it? Does he retire? Does he retire at the end of the next episode and next Sunday night? This coming Sunday, 21st. Which sucks because I'm working a 12-hour shift at work, so I will not be able to see this until late next Sunday night, which sucks. But what are we going to see there? They're obviously going to chronicle the Boneyard match and talk about that. And with all of the different stars that have been interviewed for this and talking about feeling for him and just wanting him to retire and have closure that he wants, Triple H, Shawn Michaels, Batista, Mick Foley with his grandma hair. What is going on? Mick Foley, we love you, but that hair, what are you doing, man? You look like you just got back from the beauty parlor. It's all curly and shit. Gross. Anyway, I like more crew cut Mick with the long beard. I think it looks much better than my 95-year-old grandmother hair that he currently is rocking in that. But everybody in there were saying a lot of the same things about him. They all had legitimate concern for him. And even my girlfriend made mention of that. She said it was really sweet, to see all those wrestlers honestly love him that much. They just want him to be happy and have his closure, and Batista was saying, he's like, I just don't want him to get hurt. I love that guy. Undertaker, that's when, when you have a great career and when you're respected and beloved by your peers and everything else goes out the window. Because I'll tell you one thing right now, Batista and The Undertaker have extremely different politics. They are a night and day, but they are brothers until the end. And Batista just wants what's best for his friend and somebody that gave him so much and that he worked with. And everybody on the documentary said the same thing. They just want him to be happy and get his closure, and he just can't figure out exactly when the time is right. And I've expressed my frustrations over the past couple of years and how everything at WrestleMania 33, maybe it wasn't the way I envisioned it in my head years ago, but it was going to do. It was symbolic enough for me. Non-title match, main event of WrestleMania, going out on your back to WWE's current poster boy, closest one they really have, and symbolically leaving your gear in the ring, saying goodbye to everybody. That was it. But he wasn't happy with his performance. He came back only to have a couple of performances that were even worse than that. And now he feels like he's kind of in limbo here. And the last time we saw him in the cinematic edited Boneyard match was a great match, well received by everybody, peers, fans, all of us. We all sang the praises of the match. At least it's a good way. At least it's a memory. At least it's a positive memory. And our last memory of The Undertaker isn't a negative one. But man, with that 30th anniversary so close, I don't know how you don't do something, And with cinematic matches now becoming a thing, I feel like maybe, just maybe, a Sting and Undertaker thing could still happen if they just edit the shit out of it and they do a graveyard match, Sting and The Undertaker. Because then they won't be exposed for what a crappy match. If you put them inside the middle of the ring in front of 80,000 people, it's going to be horrid. But, maybe that's what you do. Maybe you do that, you film it and do the whole cinematic presentation between Sting and Undertaker on November 22nd of 2020 on the 30th anniversary, and that will be his official retirement match. But according to what we saw in the previews of Part 5 here, he sings the praises pretty highly of AJ Styles. And, maybe AJ is the last guy that he's in the ring with. I don't know. But we'll see. I feel like we're going to get a pretty heavy episode in the next one. And I don't know. But that might have been the best one of the chapters yet. I feel like this one was the most eye-opening and really starting to get to know him now that it's been a 5-part series. And we're right on the verge of the end. Right on the verge of the end. I don't know. We'll see. Let me cruise up here. Super chat. Would I like to do another watch along? Victor, did I answer that one already? I think I did. Yes, I would like to do another watch along, and I need to. And Vontae, good to see you, man. Appreciate the $5. Honestly, if the Boneyard match is his last match, that's a perfect ending for him. It is. I mean, it really did. It embodied and encompassed everything that The Undertaker is about. The death, the magic tricks, the fire, the special effects, and the ass kicking, the motorcycle. It was all of his, past kind of rolled into one there. And I'm fine with that too, if that's the way it's going to be, because at least, like I said, at least it's a positive memory. Not how I envisioned it in my head. I envisioned something a little bit more like WrestleMania 33. Like, maybe here's what I do. And nothing against AJ Styles. If he wants his last match be against AJ, no problem. But let's say, for argument's sake, they were able to put together some sort of a cinematic confrontation between The Undertaker and Sting. Now, normally I would be completely against this idea, but in the face of the COVID stuff and some of the different production that WWE's had to utilize. I think now that match is suddenly not out of the question, where before it was an absolute hard no way. They'll expose themselves. They'll embarrass themselves. 80,000 people will be wondering what the hell they're watching, and it'll be a nightmare. But if you could do something like this changes everything. So maybe you could do, that's what I would like to see. I would like to see they set it up in the fall, Undertaker versus Sting, whatever they want to call it, some special name, and it's going to be filmed in the same style, like in the dark outside, just like the Boneyard match was with AJ. This big confrontation between the two, and that will be Undertaker's official retirement. And since it's pre-taped, after the match is over, he can come down to the ring at Survivor Series, provided that they hold it on November 22nd. So it can be 30 years to the day after they play the cinematic match for everybody at home, and on the big screen, he comes down to the ring, removes all the shit again, does the whole deal that he did at WrestleMania 33 again, except this time he means it, puts it all in the ring, says his official goodbye, and then here in LA, next year, Hall of Fame. That's the way I would write it, if I had any say or what. But maybe Sting isn't even a part of this, because he was recently cut by WWE, so maybe Taker can still do something like this, but it's not with Sting, it's with, I don't know, somebody else, and he can finally say, I've had my last match. I don't know, but if it's AJ, I'm fine. Hey, I'm fine with whatever Taker decides, basically. He's put his time in 30 plus years with the company, or 30 plus years in wrestling. Whatever he wants to do, I ain't going to tell him any different, but if I had any say, or if I had my choice in the matter, I might do it something like that. I still would be amazed if they somehow ignore that 30-year debut of The Undertaker. And for him to officially retire just 4 months shy of that, after 30 years, you can't wait 4 more months, kind of blows my mind a little bit. So I don't know. I don't know what we're going to see next week. I don't know. I just feel like Survivor Series, at least do the ceremony there. At least do, like I was so blown away this year at Wrestle Kingdom with what they did for Jushin Liger. Especially after on the Monday after the 2-night event, was so good, and the ceremony is so respectful. And I would love to see something along those lines, with Taker kind of being there in the ring, and, no music and no bullshit, no fireworks, just dead silence, dead respect, just paying homage to the Godfather, which is what I've always called The Undertaker. And it was ironic in the documentary yesterday, he referred to himself as the Godfather when he was sitting in the chair, back there backstage and letting all the people pass by and say hello and pay their respects. He called himself, he goes, I feel like the Godfather, which is exactly what I've always referred to him as. I feel like he's the Godfather of the locker room. I feel like after he dies, I envision like an oil painting, like in a college, locker room or something, there's the, big painting of the winningest coach, or, the founder of the school or something like that. I feel like Taker will always have that just presence, even after he's gone, even after he passes away, his presence will always be looked at as the Godfather. He's taken the reins from Andre. Andre had that role back in the day, and now I think Taker has assumed that role of just being the one epic figure back there that you just approach with respect, and respect beyond anybody else, and he's kind of that guy. So it was interesting to hear him refer to himself as that, because it's the way I've always felt about him. But either way, it's going to be crazy for me. I mean, I am a grown-ass man in my 40s. I was 13 when he debuted in WWE. To me, that blows my mind. I mean, I barely had hair under my arms when this guy came out at Survivor Series, and here I am in my 40s, grown-ass man, all the way through phases of life, and I'm probably closer to the end of it than the beginning, and that's how long he's been doing this, 30 years. I was a child when he debuted, and many of you weren't even close to being born. So it's been a long time. It's been a long ride. That's why I have the utmost respect for him in any decision he makes, even if it's not personally maybe the decision I would have made. I can't even for a second bitch about it, because I think that's disrespectful, and somebody gives their life and their body 30 plus years to doing something. The least we can do is be respectful. So that's kind of the way I feel about it. So we'll see how it wraps up. We'll see what the future holds, but ignoring Survivor Series to me would be a huge disappointment. Not a mistake, not the wrong move, not stupid, just disappointing for me as a fan. That's my opinion. No, I don't think we're going to see Undertaker and Cena again. We already got that. Yeah, you're right, Maka International. He really does. When you talk to him, he really seems to struggle to let wrestling go. And that's just something that, we haven't seen Undertaker in these type of interviews before, so there's really no way to gauge his personality prior to this. But I never thought that he was that person. I never thought that he would be somebody like a Flair or a Hogan, who I used to constantly give shit to. I'm like, enough is enough, guys. Especially Flair after the retirement. I think that was really when I kind of soured on Flair. I'm like, man, if you can't respect that retirement and that send-off they gave you, I don't know how much respect I have for you after that, money or no money. If you would have managed your money better, you wouldn't have needed to take the payday from TNA and to go over there and bastardize yourself like that. I just didn't like it. It just left a sour taste in my mouth. And I never thought that somebody like Taker with so much respect would struggle to hang on. He would know enough to let the future generation take the reins and hand it over to them, because that's what you're supposed to do. So the longer he hangs on, it's like, you're coming awfully close to, tarnishing your own legacy by just sticking around to where we just remember all these shitty matches you had in the end. And he did say in the documentary last night, he said he's talked to Sean about this, and he told Sean, I wish I would have gone with you. And that would have been a great way. Now, I'm against, with him, I'm against people retiring at the same time. When you have legends the size and caliber of Sean and Taker, those are two separate retirements on 2 separate years with 2 separate Hall of Fames. I don't think you really do those at the same time. But if that would have been the end, that would have been great. Now, if that would have been the end, we wouldn't have gotten the 2 Triple H matches and the amazing end of an era Hell in the Cell match that we got in 2012. We wouldn't have gotten that. We never would have seen the streak beaten either, which wouldn't have been horrible. So had he left then, that would have been good, and we would have remembered The Undertaker. He would have not, his legendary status wouldn't be any less, than it would be with the 10 years plus that he wrestled beyond that. He had already more than proven himself as arguably the greatest of all time. He didn't even need to wrestle beyond 2010, in my opinion. And beyond that Shawn Michaels retirement match, that could have been the end for him. If not, it could have been the end after the 2 Triple H matches. He didn't need to come back and wrestle Punk or Brock or Bray or Shane or Cena or whoever else, Roman. All those matches didn't even need to happen. But they did. Trey, I don't hate on John Cena. I'm a huge John Cena supporter. I will always have his back. Proudly. Yeah, I think we talked about that, Regina, about the Godfather thing, how I refer to The Undertaker as the Godfather. And one of his best friends had that gimmick. An interesting note about Charles Wright, too. 2 of his gimmicks both had father in the name, Papa and Father, which is interesting. He went from Papa Shango to Godfather. He was Kama. He was the Extreme Fighting Machine. That was a great gimmick. Yeah, I saw the rumors on Taker and Shane today, which surprised me because I was surprised that they worked last year. After they did that WrestleMania thing and Shane took the big dive off the cage and that whole deal, I didn't think that they would ever work again. But then they worked the tag last year. Now you're telling me that they're going to work again? If they are, that's purely at the request of Taker, which is why I'm not going to fly off the rails about that. I'm sure that fans probably aren't too keen on that, but they're bros and they're friends and they're close friends. And if Taker wants to work with Shane again, it's one of those deals where, yeah, maybe that's not ideal, but who the hell are we to criticize? Shut up. And now if this turns out that Vince McMahon wants this match and Shane and Undertaker are against it and Vince wants it and he's forcing it and it's going to happen no matter what, then we can complain about it. But if it's, like I said, if it's The Undertaker, if this is something he wants to do, he's earned the right to close out his career any way he wants. And we just got to accept it, kind of thing. Just got to accept it. Let Taker be Taker. Hopefully, when he finally does retire, it'll be in a good way and we'll all be satisfied with it and we'll get the closure that we need. But with Taker and Shane, I don't think there's any closure that needs to be made there. They've had their matches, their big moments together. Doing it again seems pointless to me, but if that's what Taker wants, it's likely what Taker's going to get. Who will induct the Undertaker in the Hall of Fame is another interesting one. It seems like it would be Kane, but there's a case to be made for Vince. The only other person Vince has ever inducted is Austin, and I think Taker could be a candidate, but I think Kane would be, he'll do a great job. What do you guys think about Lesnar and Cena? Do you think we get one more of those before it's all said and done? One more Lesnar and Cena match? The last time they were in the ring was that SummerSlam match. Well, they were in the ring. I think they did a triple threat and maybe something else, but I think the last time they were in the ring one-on-one, it was that raping that took place in 2014. So I don't know if we get one more of those. You know, maybe Cena gets that win back somewhere, because at this point, if you wrestle now and he beats Brock, like, no damage is done. Well, Cena beat him. Like, I was really surprised that Cena beat him at that Extreme Rules when he came back. That surprised the shit out of me. And I think what WWE was doing was just reminding Brock that, okay, you're back, but you got to play ball with us, and we need you to do a job to our top guy just as a sign of good faith kind of thing. That's the way I felt like that was, because after that, he was pretty much dominant, although he did lose to Triple H. But for the most part, you know, he was on a tear ever since then. So I think that was his, you know, kind of initiation back into the fold there for him to job like that. And he got that win back and then some in the SummerSlam match, because even when Cena beat him in that Extreme Rules match, Brock dominated him the whole time, just beat the piss out of Cena for a solid 20 minutes. And Cena kind of got lucky at the end and got him AA on the steps or whatever and got the win. So, you know, that was a weird match to me. I was surprised, but you know, maybe we'll get one more before it's all over and Cena beats him and puts him down. Honestly, if Brock Lesnar ever has a retirement match, I wouldn't be surprised if it was against Cena. Because they go way back, spanning a couple of different eras, and have had many battles. And by the time these guys are retiring, their little issue will probably run about 20 years when they finally start. Because I think they kicked off things when Cena was a heel. They had a couple of matches in 2003, right? So, you know, 3 years from now, you'll be 20 years into that issue, and it could be a marquee special attraction WrestleMania retirement. Maybe, I know a lot of fans have talked about this, and I'm against it, but if you're going to do a double retirement, maybe you could do that with those two guys. Hell, maybe you could do a triple retirement and throw Randy Orton in the mix. You could have the entire little OVW crew there retire together, but I just don't think that's the way you do retirements. But you got to start thinking about those guys. You got to start thinking about the final chapters of Orton, of Cena, of Lesnar, and how those guys are going to wrap up their careers, how many more titles they're each going to get. I still think Cena is going to win one. I think Cena will be Universal Champion. I think Randy Orton will probably be Universal Champion. I think WWE wants those names on its lineage, unless, of course, the Universal Championship is dismantled and done away with or something in the future. Otherwise, I think those are names that'll be on it. And Brock, I don't know if he'll find his way back to the title, because they've been doing a lot of rinse and repeat with Brock lately too. Drops a belt, comes back, wins it, drops it again. Really don't want to see that happen this time and have him return and face Drew at SummerSlam just for them to do what they did last year with Seth and Brock, where Seth beat him both times. I don't think you necessarily need to do that with Drew. He beat him at WrestleMania. That was enough. Let him keep winning for a while. I don't know. And I don't know how long do you think McIntyre holds the title? You know, do you think he'll hold it until next year's WrestleMania? Do you think he'll drop it at SummerSlam to Randy Orton? Randy Orton's on a roll. Will he drop it at the Royal Rumble, or will they just keep it on him all the way to LA next year until he puts someone else over? Maybe the winner of the Royal Rumble. Maybe a Matt Riddle. Maybe a Karrion Kross. I don't know. Maybe not Karrion. Yeah, I don't think Batista's going to be coming. Batista's retired. I don't think he'll have anything to do with it. I don't think Triple H made Batista look bad. You got to remember, Triple H is the one that's been in the ring. Batista has not. If anybody made Batista look bad, Batista did. And I'm a Batista fan. But, you know, he was rusty, and it showed. He tripped when he was getting into the ring. So I don't think Triple H deserves all the blame there at all. But Brock and Lashley, we still haven't gotten that. Like, that blows my mind. And hey, I like that idea too. You know, to me, we talked about the Brock Lashley match last night, and I was like, I've always wanted to see that match, but now I feel like it's not going to be much of a match. You know, Lashley's not credible. He's not believable anymore. Even though he should be. He's not. So if Brock and Lashley had a match, I wouldn't for 1 second feel like that's a dream match. Like, oh my God, who's going to win? I know who's going to win. Brock's going to win. But if in a little while, after Lashley goes through this whole routine with McIntyre, has his heel run in the faction with MVP, does that for a while, then turns babyface and has that big match with Lesnar and retires him, why not? But you got to do a lot with Lashley until then. He's got to do a lot of redemption and all sorts of shit to get him up to that level. But I'm not against it happening. I still like Lashley very much. But I don't know where he's going to go after this. I don't think he's going to win the title. I think Drew goes into SummerSlam with the title. So if they do an Extreme Rules match, which they likely will, I think Lashley loses. But then I don't know what he does and the fate of the faction and if it's going to be as short-lived as Zelina's crew was. Because I have high hopes for MVP's crew, you know, putting the offer into Shelton Benjamin tonight and starting to add some pieces and talking to the NXT kids and all that shit and kind of laying the groundwork for that. I'm all for that, but the way WWE cuts through and blows through ideas and shit, I'm not optimistic that it will even last very long. So might not matter. Did Triple H bury Booker T at Mania? I don't know. There was part of me back in the day that did defend the outcome. I didn't think it was that big of a deal. I don't think the match itself in a vacuum was a burial at all. It was a good match with a winner and a loser, and the champion went over. It's not like it was a squash or a burial or anything like that. The burial part came in the build. The burial part came in the build when Triple H was touching on some racial shit with Booker T, said a couple of really fucked up things in promos, and based on the extremity of what Triple H said, he should have gotten his comeuppance at WrestleMania, and he did not. So based on the build of this, it felt like Booker T needed to win. Now, if this was just a straight-up match, and there wasn't a lot of that shit going on in the build, and it's just Booker T and Triple H wins, sometimes that happens. Sometimes that's the way life goes, and sometimes life isn't fair. But based on everything they were doing storyline-wise, looking back, it's pretty surprising that Booker T didn't win. But, you know, also in those days, that was the first year that they had the one title. And I guess at 21, it changed both times. But that felt like it was a changing of the guard. Like you knew going into that, Cena and Batista were coming out on top. Triple H was still in his heyday of his run. I mean, that was prior to Evolution even. So that was really starting to kickstart the Reign of Terror stuff. And Triple H had only been back for a year, came back the year before at the Royal Rumble. So it's not like he was, you know, this long-running champion that's passing the torch. It just wasn't, just not what WWE was going to do at the time. So looking back, it's a match that when you watch it now, like, yeah, why the hell did Booker T not win that? But when you try to put yourselves in their brain at the time, I can also see why Triple H did. But I'm in the minority there. If you poll 100 fans, 100 of them are going to say that Booker T was buried. So I understand that nobody thinks like me, but that's the way it went. Yeah, they could put, we've been wondering about the Hall of Fame. There's a lot of people just sitting there waiting. Batista, Jushin Liger, the Bulldog, right? Who else was set for this year? NWO. And we thought they might just push it to SummerSlam and do it there, which would be fine. But now there hasn't been much discussion about that either. So if they postpone it even longer and do it in Dallas, is that where the Survivor Series is, in Dallas? On the 22nd, then, or that weekend, then yeah, they got to do it. Because I want to have a regular Hall of Fame next year. I want to get this one done, because if you don't, you're just going to have to repeat this year's class next year, which not necessarily a horrible thing, but I really think it would be awesome if I am present for The Undertaker going into the Hall of Fame, and I feel like he would this year, if that's the plan. So I really want to see that. So I'm selfishly hoping that we get these guys done, so I can potentially see that live. It feels like just a fitting thing for me to see, because I've watched every single second of The Undertaker's career. I remember him WCW. I remember him on Saturdays watching him on WCW come out of the ring with Teddy Long and shit. So I feel like being in the arena when he finally has a send-off might be a nice little feather in my own personal wrestling experience cap. So playing it selfish on that one. You guys can do me a favor. We got a pretty good audience of here of close to 400 folks, but the likes are shit. You guys, please hook me up with some likes. I got jabroni likes. Give me mid-card likes. I'm cool with that. I just don't want to be a jabroni. I don't want jobber likes. Give me mid-card likes. One day we'll get main event likes, but I got to be realistic. Baby steps, right? No, Macho Man's in, but again, way too late. There's a couple of Hall of Fame inductions that infuriate me. Macho Man is one of them. Vader, you're like, why couldn't this happen when they were live? Did Vader get in or no? He might not be in yet, but either way, he's dead. They should have brought him in. And Macho Man was one of the more frustrating ones because I felt like it was finally starting to happen. I remember I just moved here and was living here in California, and I started seeing Randy Savage pop up on the toy commercials. And I was like, wow, it's the first time he's had anything WWE related going on in 20 years. And to me, it was surreal to see that. I'm like, this might be it. This might be it. And in less than a year, he died in the car accident or in the heart attack and the car crash. And I was like, he was so close. I felt like it would have happened. I felt like that was the first step, kind of like Goldberg doing the video game, and that opened the door for him to come in, and Sting, the same thing. And that would have been that situation for Savage, where I think it would have only been a matter of time before a phone call was placed between him and Vince, and a meeting was set, and a Hall of Fame was worked out, and all of that, and we could have gotten it. But he died. I feel like if he would have passed away 3 or 4 years later, we would have gotten that. But again, WWE should have had him in way before. They should have been calling him in 2005. When Hogan went in 2005, right? Was it 05? He should have been there right with him, because, everybody went in at the same time. They had that big class in 04 with Bobby and Jesse and Valentine, Superstar and Race, and a lot of guys. But then the next year it was like Hogan, Piper, Mean Gene went in shortly after that. All those guys from that era all went in with just a couple of years of each other. So Savage being a part of that and being a headliner, he could have headlined ahead of Brett, instead of in Brett in 06, it could have been Savage in 06. It's just a shame, but they never got it done. And then years and years went by and we never saw it. Then Savage passed away. And then by the time they put him in, I'm still bothered that Hogan did it, because Hogan's full of shit. They were not friends. Even if there was some sort of weird patching up at the end there was way too much bad blood, I think, for Hogan to be the inductee. Now, had they never had the issues and the personal problems that they had that wasn't so heavily documented, Hogan would absolutely be the right person. The Mega Powers were legendary, but given their history and stuff, I just thought it was inappropriate, and it also felt dirty because Savage wasn't there. And it felt dirtier when Hogan was doing it because he lies all the time. And when he was doing his speech, nothing felt genuine. It didn't make me feel good. It made me feel just sick. I don't know why. Just not the induction that I wanted for Savage. Lanny did his thing. Lanny's Lanny. And accepting on his brother's behalf. And nothing there was really upsetting. It's just the Hogan stuff and the fact that Savage is not alive anymore. It just all sucked. Just wish there would have been a little bit more to it than what it was, but that's the way it goes. That's the way it goes. Axe and Smash, I guess not in the Hall of Fame. I believe they were part of that concussion lawsuit, and I think anybody that was involved in that has been at least temporarily blacklisted from WWE, but Demolition not being in is pretty infuriating. I know Davey's going in, but I think the Bulldogs could go in together. A lot of tag teams could. And Axe and Smash are two of those names. Well, yeah, Hulk Hogan is a hypocrite. I don't want to dislike Hogan. He's such a big part of wrestling, but man, he's just made an ass of himself in the last decade or so. I just didn't like the Savage thing. Just gave me a sick feeling. I got too many pleasant memories of Macho Man, and if there was one Hall of Fame I could do, that's the one I would want to do that we never got. Just a shame. Well, we've been going about an hour and a half here, so I'll probably be cruising on out of here in a bit. What else do we need to discuss before I go? Any other wrestling news? Trying to think. You guys aren't going to see me until Thursday. We're going to do that Money in the Bank 2011 review that I talked about. That'll be a live stream on on Thursday night. But you won't see me until then. I will be working all day on Wednesday, so I will not be home to watch Dynamite and NXT, but I'll be keeping my eye on it. And you guys feel free to send me updates and shit. We'll be getting into all of that on Saturday for the Winged Eagle podcast. And I'll be working out some other stuff as well. So yeah, I think that's going to wrap it up for tonight. That was another fun stream, another successful stream. I want to thank all you guys for hanging out. Hello, Nick Musser. You're saying hello, and I am saying goodbye. Well, let's answer this one first from Masta. Top 5 Hall of Fame speech. I already know number 1, Bobby Heenan. I'm also going to go Brett, because Brett's speech went like an hour long, and he told some really fun stories in there. So I'm going to go Brett, or number 1, Heenan. I'm going to go Brett. I liked, now I got to think. Because now I'm not going to do some justice. There were some that were more surprising than others, like Kurt Angle's. I loved Kurt Angle's. I loved Mick Foley's. I loved the Freebirds. Randomly, I loved the Freebirds. I thought they were great. I enjoyed Ric Flair's. I enjoyed the Horsemen. I got to give that some more thought to actually come up with a top 5. That is a video idea. It's a really good video idea. I should do top 5 favorite Hall of Fame speeches. Just something for fun. I needed to start doing some more special episodes and throwing them up there on YouTube and see how they do. We'll start doing that. I'm going to give that some thought. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and bail out of here now. Thank you very much for hanging out tonight, guys. As always, Monday nights are always a blast here on the YouTube channel. And keep an eye out to the channel. And don't forget to join me this coming Thursday for a fun look at the Summer of Punk in 2011. We'll talk about the pipe bomb. We'll talk about the 5-star match with John Cena at Money in the Bank. We'll talk about the return. We'll talk about all that stuff. It'll be a hoot, a blast, and a kick-ass fucking time. So you guys take care. Have a good week, and I'll catch you on Thursday. Peace.